The lecture hall fell silent as Commander Zekthar entered the room. His scales bore the silver marks of a veteran, and his eyes held the weight of battles that still haunted him. The young Krithian cadets sat straighter in their seats, their communication tendrils stiffening with attention. "Today, we discuss Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha," Zekthar announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. He pressed a control and a holographic image appeared above the central platform. It showed a human soldier, unremarkable in appearance, wearing armor marked with a red cross symbol and carrying a white case with the same marking. "When you see this in battle, you retreat immediately. No exceptions, no debate. You run." A young cadet in the third row, Kelvar, couldn't contain himself. His tendrils flicked with confusion and barely concealed arrogance. "Commander, with respect, that is a non-combatant. Our training says to ignore medical personnel and focus on armed threats. Why should we fear a human carrying bandages?" Several other cadets chittered in agreement. They were young, fresh from basic training, full of confidence in their superior strength and numbers. They had never faced humans in real combat. They had only heard stories. Zekthar's eyes fixed on Kelvar, and something in that gaze made the young cadet's tendrils droop. "You think you know what a threat looks like, cadet. You think a weapon makes someone dangerous. You are wrong." The commander walked slowly between the rows of seats, his clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. 15 years ago I thought as you do now. I was younger then, newly promoted, eager to prove myself. I had 300 warriors under my command. We were the pride of the Krithian assault fleet." He paused, his hand hovering over the controls. "Our intelligence reported a human medical outpost on Proxima 4. Minimal defenses. Mostly wounded personnel. An easy target to secure our foothold in the sector. I saw an opportunity for a quick victory." The hologram changed, showing a small compound surrounded by red desert. The buildings were simple, functional structures. Nothing impressive, nothing threatening. "We struck at dawn," Zekthar continued. "Our attack was perfect. We breached the outer walls in minutes. Their automated defenses fell quickly. The few guards they had were overwhelmed. By the time the sun was fully risen, we controlled 90% of the facility." Kelvar leaned forward despite himself. The other cadets were equally captivated. This was not the usual dry tactical briefing. We pushed them back to the central medical bay. Scanners showed 13 human life signs inside. 12 were critically wounded. One was a medic. Zekthar's voice grew quieter, forcing the students to strain to hear. "I sent a squad of 20 warriors to finish them. Standard procedure. Clean and quick." The hologram shifted again, showing the interior of a medical facility. Equipment lined the walls. Hospital beds held injured soldiers, and standing in the center, a human female in blood-stained medical gear, holding both a rifle and a medical scanner. "This is Corporal Sarah Chen," Zekthar said. She was 26 years old. She had been awake for 37 hours straight, treating casualties from a previous engagement. She was exhausted, low on supplies, and trapped with 12 dying soldiers who could not be moved. He looked around the room, meeting each cadet's eyes. "My 20 warriors entered that medical bay. Only 8 came back out. The others were dead or wounded. I sent 40 more. The result was the same. Shocked chittering filled the room. Kelvar's tendrils went rigid. "How? One human against trained warriors?" "That is what I asked myself," Zekthar replied. "So I watched. I positioned my forces and observed through our combat feeds. What I saw, it changed everything I understood about warfare." The commander activated a recorded video feed. The cadets watched in silence as the scene unfolded. They saw Chen moving between her patients with impossible speed. She would fire 3 rounds at an approaching warrior, then immediately turn to restart a patient's heart. She would throw a grenade to buy herself 45 seconds, then use those seconds to inject medication into a soldier's failing body. She would collapse behind cover to catch her breath, but her hands never stopped working on the wounded man beside her. "Watch her eyes," Zekthar instructed. "She checks her patients every 7 seconds, even while under fire, even while fighting. Every 7 seconds, her eyes scan those 12 humans to make sure they are still breathing." The video showed hour after hour of this impossible dance between death and healing. Chen's movements became mechanical, driven by something beyond conscious thought. Sweat poured down her face. Her hands shook from exhaustion, but she did not stop. "We tried everything," Zekthar said. "We tried overwhelming force. We tried cutting power. We tried gas attacks, but she had oxygen masks for her patients ready within seconds. We tried waiting her out, but she had recycled medical supplies into nutrients to keep herself functioning. Every tactic failed. A cadet in the back row spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, why not just destroy the entire building?" "That was suggested," Zekthar admitted. "But the facility contained intelligence data we needed. And—" He paused, his tendrils curling in what humans would recognize as shame. And by hour 3, destroying the building felt like admitting defeat. I had lost 40 warriors to one exhausted human. My pride would not allow me to simply blow her up. The video continued. Chen performed surgery while under fire. She used a plasma cutter to seal a wound while simultaneously providing covering fire with her other hand. She jury-rigged medical equipment into alarm systems to give herself 3 extra seconds of warning before attacks. She talked to her patients constantly, keeping them conscious, keeping them fighting, keeping them alive. At hour 4, one of her patients died, Zekthar said softly. His wounds were too severe. Even her skill could not save him. I watched her face through the scope. She wept. For 30 seconds, this human who had been pure efficiency and determination, she wept over this one soldier. The room was completely silent now. On the screen, Chen could be seen kneeling beside the dead soldier, her shoulders shaking. Then she stopped crying, Zekthar continued. She closed his eyes. She covered him with a sheet. And she went back to fighting. She did not slow down. She did not give up. If anything, she became more fierce. The commander stopped the video. At hour 6, human reinforcements finally arrived. We were forced to retreat. But before we left, I saw something that haunts me still. He pulled up a final image. It showed Chen collapsed against a wall, barely conscious, surrounded by her 11 surviving patients. All of them were alive. All of them were stable. And all of them were looking at her with an expression that transcended species. It was devotion. It was gratitude. It was love. I retreated that day with 217 warriors, Zekthar said. 83 were dead or too wounded to fight. We had been held off for 6 hours by 12 humans who should have been dead, and 1 medic who refused to let them die. He looked at Kelvar directly. That is why we run when we see a human carrying a medkit. Not because they are the best warriors, but because they have already decided that your death is an acceptable price for their patient's life. And humans always collect their debts. The commander's voice grew harder. A human soldier fights to survive. A human medic fights so others survive. One will retreat when beaten. The other will die first and take you with them. That is Protocol 7 Alpha. That is why we run. The lecture hall remained silent long after Zekthar finished speaking. The cadets no longer looked quite so confident. They had learned their first real lesson about humanity. Never underestimate someone who fights for another's life instead of their own. 15 years earlier, the morning sun rose over Proxima Garrison with deceptive peace. The red desert stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the small cluster of prefabricated buildings that made up the medical outpost. Inside the main facility, Corporal Sarah Chen was finishing her 3rd consecutive shift in the surgical ward. She was exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and her hands trembled slightly as she cleaned her instruments. The past week had been brutal. A transport had crashed in the nearby mountains and the survivors had been flooding in with everything from broken bones to radiation exposure. Chen and the other medics had worked around the clock to save them. Chen, get some sleep, Dr. Mbeke said, placing a hand on her shoulder. I can handle the next few hours. Sarah nodded, too tired to argue. She stripped off her surgical gloves and headed toward the barracks. Around her, the facility hummed with quiet activity. 12 patients lay in various states of recovery. Most were stable now, finally out of danger. The crisis was over, or so she thought. The explosion came without warning. The eastern wall erupted inward, throwing Chen off her feet. Her ears rang from the blast. Dust and smoke filled the air. Emergency alarms wailed their terrible song. Training took over before conscious thought could catch up. Chen rolled to her feet, grabbed her rifle from the rack, and ran toward the medical ward. Attack! All personnel to defensive positions! The voice over the intercom belonged to Lieutenant Morse, the facility commander. His voice was steady, professional, but Sarah could hear the strain underneath. They all knew the garrison's defenses were minimal. This was a hospital, not a fortress. Chen burst into the medical ward. Her patients were screaming, some trying to get out of their beds, others frozen in terror. Dr. Mbeke was already moving among them, trying to calm them. Stay down, Chen shouted. Everyone stay in your beds. Another explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by the red glow of emergency lighting. Through the windows, Sarah could see figures moving in the smoke outside. Crythian warriors, their scaled bodies moving with predatory grace. There were so many of them. She ran to the communication panel and slammed her hand on the emergency beacon. Mayday, mayday, this is Proxima Garrison under attack. Multiple hostiles, heavy weapons, requesting immediate assistance. The response came back crackling with static. Proxima Garrison, this is Fleet Command. Help is on the way. Estimated arrival time 12 hours. Hold position. Repeat, hold for 12 hours, 12 hours. Sarah's blood ran cold. They would be lucky to hold for 12 minutes. The sound of gunfire erupted from the outer corridors. Human voices shouted commands mixed with the alien clicking of Crythian war cries. The battle was already inside the facility. Lieutenant Morse's voice came over the intercom again, more urgent now. Medical personnel, prepare for evac. His words cut off with a sound Sarah recognized too well. The sound of death. Dr. Mbeke looked at Chen with wide eyes. We need to move the patients. Sarah ran to the nearest bed and checked the monitor. Severe internal injuries. Moving him would kill him. She checked the next. Broken spine. Moving him would kill him too. She went down the line, checking each of her 12 patients. 7 of them would die if moved. The other 5 might survive transport but were too weak to fight. We can't move them, Sarah said. It will kill them. Then what do we do? Mbeke asked. The door burst open. A security guard stumbled in, blood pouring from a wound in his side. They are everywhere, he gasped. Everyone else is dead or captured. I barely made it here. Chen caught him as he fell and quickly assessed his wound. Bad, but manageable. She pulled him to an empty bed and started working. How many attackers? Hundreds. Maybe more. We never had a chance. The guard gripped her arm. You need to surrender, Doc. Save yourselves. Sarah's hands moved automatically, cleaning the wound, stopping the bleeding. Her mind raced. Surrender meant becoming prisoners. It might mean death for all of them, but fighting seemed equally hopeless. She looked around the medical bay. 13 patients now, counting the guard. Most barely conscious, all helpless. Her responsibility. The decision crystallized in her mind with perfect clarity. She would not let them die. Not without a fight. Dr. Mbeke, gather all medical supplies and bring them to the center of the room. Security guard, what's your name? Private Collins, ma'am. Collins, where are the weapons stored? Armory on the 2nd floor, but it is probably overrun by now. Chen looked around the medical bay. 3 rifles in the emergency locker. 6 sidearms. A dozen stun grenades. Not much, but enough. Maybe. Mbeke, I need you to gather anything that can be used as a weapon or tool. Plasma cutters, oxygen tanks, anything. Collins, I need you to tell me everything you know about where the Crythians are positioned. The doctor stared at her. Sarah, what are you planning? I am planning to keep my patients alive for 12 hours. That is insane. We should surrender. Chen met her eyes. If you want to surrender, go. I won't stop you. But I am staying with my patients. Mbeke looked at the beds, at the injured humans who trusted them with their lives. Then back at Chen. You really think we can hold them off? I think we can try. The doctor nodded slowly. Then I am staying too. Over the next 10 minutes they worked with frantic efficiency. Chen organized the beds into a defensive circle in the center of the room. She distributed weapons to the 3 patients who were conscious and capable enough to shoot. She set up medical equipment within easy reach of every bed. She jury-rigged motion sensors from heart monitors to give them warning of approaching enemies. Dr. Mbeke proved surprisingly resourceful, creating makeshift barricades from overturned equipment and reinforcing the doors with welded metal panels from surgical tables. Collins, despite his injury, managed to access the security system. The news was not good. They control the entire facility except this room, he reported. Looks like about 300 hostiles total. They are regrouping outside, probably planning their final push. Chen checked her ammunition. 3 magazines for her rifle. 60 rounds total. Not enough. Never enough. The communication panel suddenly crackled to life. A voice spoke in heavily accented but understandable English. Humans in the medical facility. This is Commander Zekthar of the Crythian Assault Fleet. You are surrounded. You have no hope of rescue or escape. Surrender now and you will be treated as prisoners of war. Resist and you will be eliminated. You have 2 minutes to decide. Sarah looked at her patients. Some were unconscious. Others watched her with frightened eyes. All of them depended on her. She walked to the communication panel and pressed the transmit button. Commander Zekthar, this is Corporal Sarah Chen, combat medic. I have 13 wounded personnel who cannot be moved. I will not surrender them to you. If you want this facility, you will have to come through me. There was a long pause. Then the Crithian commander spoke again, and there was something like confusion in his voice. You refuse? You are one medic with dying soldiers. You cannot win. Chen surprised herself by laughing. It was a harsh, exhausted sound. Probably not. But I am really good at keeping people alive, Commander. You're going to find that out the hard way. She released the transmit button and turned to her patients. All right, people. We have got 12 hours to wait for rescue. Who wants to place bets on whether we make it? One of the conscious patients, a young private with bandages covering most of his face, managed a weak smile. I bet on you, Doc. You are too stubborn to lose. Chen checked his IV line and adjusted his pain medication. Damn right I am. The lights in the medical bay flickered. Outside she could hear the Crithians organizing, preparing their assault. Chen took a deep breath, picked up her rifle, and positioned herself where she could see both the door and her patients. Dr. Mbeke stood beside her, holding a plasma cutter like a weapon. This is crazy, the doctor whispered. Absolutely, Chen agreed. We are all going to die. Maybe. But not for 12 hours, and not without one hell of a fight. The first Crithian warriors appeared at the door. Chen raised her rifle and fired. The Battle of Proxima Garrison had begun. The first wave hit the medical bay like a hammer. 5 Crithian warriors burst through the door, their scales gleaming in the red emergency lighting. They moved fast, weapons raised, expecting easy prey. Chen dropped 2 of them before they made it 3 steps inside. Dr. Mbeke swung her plasma cutter in a wide arc, forcing another back. Private Collins, firing from his bed with one hand while holding his wounded side with the other, caught the 4th in the shoulder. The 5th warrior made it to the center of the room before Chen's rifle barked again. The warrior fell. Silence. Smoke drifted in the air. Chen's ears rang. Everyone okay? She called out. Various groans and confirmations came back. One patient had been hit by debris, nothing serious. Chen mentally added it to her list of things to fix. The list was getting long. Reload, she ordered. Check your ammunition. Conserve every shot. She ran to the nearest patient, a sergeant with a collapsed lung. His monitor was beeping frantically. The stress of the fight had destabilized him. Chen dropped her rifle and grabbed her medical scanner. Stay with me, Sergeant. I have got you. Her hands moved with practiced precision. She adjusted his chest tube, recalibrated the medication pump, watched his oxygen levels climb back to safe levels. 30 seconds. That was all she could spare. A sound at the door made her grab her rifle again. More warriors incoming. She fired 3 shots, forcing them back, then returned to her patient. His breathing was easier now. Good enough. Mbeke, check on Private Harris. His heart rate is too high. The doctor moved to comply, still clutching her plasma cutter. They were learning a new kind of medicine now. The kind practiced between gunfights. The second wave came harder. 10 warriors this time, better coordinated. They tried to suppress Chen with covering fire while others advanced. It was good tactics. It should have worked, but Chen was not fighting alone anymore. The 3 conscious patients who could shoot were getting used to their weapons now. They could not aim well, weak and wounded as they were, but they did not need to. The medical bay was small. Any shot in the general direction of the door would hit something. The Crithians retreated again, leaving 3 more bodies. Chen used the respite to check on her patients systematically. Private Rodriguez needed a blood transfusion. His reserves were dangerously low. She started the transfusion while explaining to Mbeke how to monitor it. Watch the flow rate. If it drops, adjust this valve. If he starts convulsing, stop it immediately and call me. Where will you be? Fighting. An explosion rocked the building. The Crithians were trying to breach the wall now. Chen grabbed a stun grenade and threw it through the hole they were making. The blast and flash of light bought them another minute. She ran back to Rodriguez, checked his transfusion, then sprinted to Corporal Yamada, whose IV had been torn loose by the explosion. She reinstalled it in less than 20 seconds, her fingers working by muscle memory while her eyes tracked the door for threats. This was her life now. Fight, heal, fight, heal. There was no separation anymore between medic and soldier. She was both simultaneously, switching between roles in the space of a heartbeat. The third wave came during hour 2, 20 warriors, and this time they brought heavy weapons. The first plasma bolt melted through their barricade like butter. Down, Chen screamed. Everyone who could move dropped. The bolt passed over them, scorching the ceiling. Chen army crawled to a new position and returned fire. She hit the warrior with the plasma weapon, but more were coming. Private Collins tried to shift position and screamed in pain. His wound had reopened. Chen could see blood spreading across his bandages. She could not reach him. Not yet. Too many hostiles at the door. Collins' pressure on that wound. Use your other hand. She kept firing, forcing the Crithians to take cover. Mbeke threw a medical tray like a discus, hitting a warrior in the face. The alien stumbled back and Chen's bullet found him. Finally, a moment of calm. Chen ran to Collins. This is going to hurt, she warned. More than being shot? Probably. She worked fast, packing the wound with hemostatic gauze, resealing it with surgical glue meant for internal use. It would hold for now. Everything was for now in this nightmare. During hour 3, Private Jensen went into cardiac arrest. Chen was in the middle of reloading when the alarm screamed. She looked at the monitor and saw the flatline. No. Not now. Not him. She dropped her rifle and ran to his bed. Her hands found his chest, started compressions. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Come on, Jensen. Come on. The Crithians chose that moment to attack again. Of course they did. Chen continued compressions with one hand while grabbing her sidearm with the other. She fired blindly toward the door, not aiming, just making noise to keep them cautious. Mbeke. Door. The doctor took up position, firing Chen's rifle with shaking hands. The shots were wild, but effective enough to buy time. Chen grabbed the defibrillator. Clear! The shock jolted Jensen's body. The monitor stayed flat. Clear. Another shock. Still nothing. Chen started compressions again, her arms burning with exhaustion. She had been awake for over 40 hours now. Her body was running on adrenaline and willpower. Don't you dare die on me, Private. Don't you dare. She hit him with the defibrillator a third time. The monitor beeped. A heartbeat. Weak, but there. Yes. Chen wanted to collapse in relief. But there was no time. The Crithians were pushing hard at the door. She grabbed her rifle and returned to the fight. Jensen lived. That was what mattered. Hour 4 broke her just a little. Sergeant Morrison, the patient with the collapsed lung, went into respiratory failure. Chen had known it was coming. His lungs were too damaged. She had been giving him borrowed time with the chest tube and oxygen. That borrowed time ran out. She tried everything. Every technique she knew. Every desperate measure. But sometimes medicine was not enough. Sometimes the body just gave up. Morrison died with Chen's hands on his chest, trying one last time to restart his heart. For 30 seconds, Sarah Chen stopped being a soldier and became just a woman. She knelt beside Morrison's bed and cried. The tears came hard and fast, breaking through the wall she had built to keep functioning. She cried for Morrison. She cried for all of them. She cried because she was so tired and scared, and this was all impossible. Then she stopped. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She stood up. She covered Morrison's body with a sheet, closed his eyes, and whispered an apology. Then she picked up her rifle and went back to work. The Crithians attacked again. Chen met them with a fury that surprised even her. Every shot was aimed with perfect precision. Every movement was calculated for maximum efficiency. She was not just fighting anymore. She was making them pay. They retreated faster this time. During hour 5, Chen did surgery under fire. Private Harris's appendix had ruptured. The infection was spreading fast. He would be dead in an hour without intervention. I need to operate, Chen told Mbeke. Now? In the middle of this? Especially now. She set up as fast as she could. Sterilized instruments with antiseptic spray. Laid out her tools. Gave Harris anesthetic. The Crithians attacked while she was making the first incision. Chen operated with her left hand and fired her sidearm with her right. It should have been impossible. Probably was impossible, but she did it anyway because the alternative was letting Harris die. She cut, removed the infected appendix, sealed blood vessels, all while bullets flew over her head. Mbeke provided cover fire. The conscious patients helped where they could. They were a team now, bound together by shared desperation. 20 minutes later, Chen finished the last suture. Harris would live. She had performed an emergency appendectomy in a war zone while under active fire. She did not even stop to appreciate the insanity of it. She just moved to the next crisis. Because there was always a next crisis. Hour 6 arrived like a mercy. Chen heard the sound of human aircraft in the distance. Reinforcements. Finally, she allowed herself one moment of hope. They had done it. They had held for 6 hours. 11 of her patients were still alive. The Crithians launched one final desperate attack, trying to claim victory before the humans arrived. But there was no victory to be had here. Chen and her patients had held the line. When the rescue forces finally breached the room, they found Chen collapsed against the wall, barely conscious. Around her, 11 patients lay in their beds, all stable, all alive. The medical bay looked like a battlefield and a surgery ward had collided. Blood covered the floors. Spent ammunition casings littered every surface. Medical equipment was scattered everywhere. And in the center of it all, one combat medic who had refused to give up. The rescue captain stood in the doorway looking at the scene in disbelief. "How?" he whispered. Chen managed an exhausted smile. "I am really good at my job." Then she passed out. Commander Zekthar stood in his command post, staring at the tactical display. The numbers made no sense. They defied every principle of warfare he had learned in 20 years of military service. 1 medical facility. 13 defenders most critically wounded. 6 hours of continuous assault. And his forces had suffered 83 casualties with nothing to show for it. "Commander, the warriors are requesting permission to withdraw," his second in command. Ralthor said quietly. Zekthar's tendrils curled in anger. "Withdraw? From a single human medic? It is not just her anymore, sir. It is what she represents. She represents nothing but our failure." But even as he said it, Zekthar knew it was not true. He had been watching Corporal Chen through their combat feeds for hours now. Every warrior sent into that medical bay wore a camera. Every assault was recorded, and Zekthar had watched every second. He had watched her save Private Collins, then shoot 3 warriors before they could capitalize on her distraction. He had watched her perform CPR on a dying soldier while firing blindly at the door with her other hand. He had watched her cry over Sergeant Morrison, then return to the fight with cold efficiency. Most disturbing of all, he had watched her patients. The wounded humans who should have been helpless victims. They fought from their beds. They encouraged each other. They smiled at Chen when she passed by, even in the middle of gunfire. They loved her. That was the part Zekthar could not understand. In Crithian military culture, warriors fought for honor and duty. They respected their commanders but did not love them. Love was for family, not for soldiers. But these humans looked at their medic with something beyond respect. It was devotion. It was trust so complete that they would follow her into death itself. "Sir, the next assault wave is ready," Ralthor reported. Zekthar nodded slowly. "Send them in." Final push. Overwhelming force. "I want this ended." He watched the tactical display as 40 warriors moved into position. This would work. It had to work. He was not going to be remembered as the commander who failed to take a medical facility. The assault began, and then something changed. Through the combat feeds, Zekthar watched his warriors hesitate. Not from fear or cowardice, but from something else. Something he had never seen before in his troops. One warrior, Krevmal, had Chen in his sights. Perfect shot. She was focused on treating a patient, her back exposed. Krevmal raised his weapon and paused. Through the camera, Zekthar could see what Krevmal saw. Chen was talking to her patient, a young human whose name Zekthar had heard her say a dozen times. Private Rodriguez. She was adjusting his blood transfusion, checking his vital signs, speaking quietly to him in soothing tones. "You are doing great, Rodriguez. Your pressure is stabilizing. Just a little longer and you will be completely out of danger." Rodriguez tried to smile through his pain. "Thanks, Doc. Sorry I'm not much help in the fighting. You are helping by staying alive. That is all I need from you." Krevmal's weapon lowered slightly. Through the comms, Zekthar heard him whisper, "She is healing him. Right now, in the middle of battle, she is healing him." "Take the shot," Zekthar ordered. But Chen had already spun around, her rifle coming up. She fired first. Krevmal went down. The assault continued, but Zekthar noticed more hesitations. His warriors were watching Chen more than they were fighting her. They were trying to understand what they were facing. During a brief lull, one of the conscious patients started singing. His voice was weak, cracked with pain, but clear. It was a human song, simple melody, words about home and hope. Chen smiled and joined in. Her voice was tired but steady. Then another patient sang, and another. Within seconds, half the medical bay was singing this strange human song, while surrounded by death and violence. Zekthar's warriors stopped shooting. They stood at the doors, weapons ready but not firing, just listening. "Commander," Ralthor said slowly. "What are they?" Zekthar had no answer. The humans finished their song. Then Chen checked her ammunition, reloaded her rifle, and the battle resumed as if nothing had happened. Through the following hour, Zekthar continued to watch. He watched Chen collapse from exhaustion, then force herself back to her feet because a patient needed her. He watched her perform surgery with hands that shook from fatigue. He watched her make impossible shots, save impossible lives, hold an impossible line. But more than that, he watched her humanity. She apologized every time she hurt a patient while treating them. She thanked them for their courage. She told them stories to keep them awake and alert. She remembered every name, every condition, every fear. She was not just keeping bodies alive. She was keeping souls intact. And she was doing all of this while killing Zekthar's warriors with mechanical efficiency. The contradiction should have been impossible. How could someone be so gentle and so lethal? How could the same hands that healed also destroy? How could she weep over a dead patient and then kill without hesitation? But humans, Zekthar was learning, were built on contradictions. They held multiple truths at once without conflict. Chen was a healer and a warrior. Gentle and fierce, compassionate and deadly. She was all of these things simultaneously, and she saw no contradiction in it. That was what made her terrifying. A Krithian warrior fought because it was their duty. They stopped fighting when duty was fulfilled or when defeat became certain. It was logical. It was rational. But Chen did not fight for duty. She fought for love. And love, Zekthar was discovering, was not logical. Love did not accept defeat. Love did not calculate odds. Love simply refused to surrender no matter the cost. "Commander," Ralthor said, interrupting his thoughts. "Human reinforcements are arriving. Multiple aircraft detected. ETA 3 minutes. Zekthar looked at the tactical display one last time. He looked at the casualty reports. He looked at the feed showing Chen collapsed against the wall. 11 surviving patients around her, all alive against every odd. He made his decision. "All units, fall back. Retreat to secondary positions, sir." Ralthor's tendrils flicked in surprise. "We can still take the facility. We have them cornered." "No," Zekthar said quietly. "We do not." "Look at them, Ralthor. Really look." On the screen, Chen was unconscious but still gripping her rifle. Her patients were watching the doors, ready to fight if needed, even in their broken state. They had been pushed to the absolute limit of endurance and beyond, but they had not broken. "They are not cornered," Zekthar continued. "They are defending. There is a difference. Cornered prey tries to escape. These humans never tried to escape. They chose this. They chose to stand and fight for each other. They are just one medic and wounded soldiers. No. They are something more, something we do not have." "What is that, sir?" Zekthar watched as human soldiers poured into the medical bay, watched them stare in amazement at what Chen and her patients had accomplished. He watched them treat Chen with the same devotion her patients showed. He saw what bound humans together. "They have each other," Zekthar said, "and they will die for each other without question. That makes them more dangerous than any weapon." He turned away from the display. "Retrieve our dead and wounded. We are leaving." As the Krithian forces withdrew, Zekthar copied all the combat recordings to a secure drive. He would need them. The High Council would need to see this. They would need to understand what they were facing. Humans were not stronger than Krithians. They were not smarter or faster or better equipped. But they had something that changed everything. They had the ability to inspire absolute loyalty through absolute sacrifice. A human medic was not just a healer. She was a symbol of what humans valued most. The willingness to put another's life above your own. The refusal to abandon those who depended on you. The ability to be both destroyer and preserver. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. As his ship lifted away from Proxima 4, Zekthar drafted his report. He knew what he had to recommend. His career might end because of it. His reputation would certainly suffer. But it had to be said. When you see a human holding medical supplies, you run, not from cowardice, but from wisdom, because that human has already decided that your death is an acceptable price for someone else's life, and humans always paid their debts in full. Commander Zekthar watched the young cadets carefully as his story finished. The lecture hall remained silent. Kelvar, the confident cadet who had questioned him earlier, sat with his tendrils drooping low. His eyes held a new understanding of what warfare truly meant. Questions? Zekthar asked. A cadet in the front row raised her hand tentatively. Sir, you said she held for 6 hours. How many of your warriors died? 47 killed. 63 wounded, 20 of them permanently disabled. The number still hurt to say even 15 years later. All because one human refused to accept the inevitable. Another cadet spoke up. But sir, it was inevitable. She could not have won. We could have simply waited for them to run out of ammunition or supplies. Could we? Zekthar activated another display. It showed charts and graphs. This is the analysis our tactical computers ran afterward. We calculated that Chen's ammunition would run out in hour 3. She stretched it to hour 6 through perfect accuracy and improvised weapons. We calculated her medical supplies would be exhausted in hour 2. She recycled, repurposed, and invented new uses for equipment to keep her patients stable. We calculated she would collapse from exhaustion by hour 4. She did not. He paused, letting the information sink in. Our computers could not predict her because computers work on logic. Corporal Chen was not operating on logic. She was operating on something our species does not have an equivalent for. What is that, sir? Zekthar pulled up an image. It showed Chen's face during the battle. Despite the exhaustion, despite the fear, her eyes held absolute determination. Humans call it stubbornness, or willpower, or refusal to quit. But it is deeper than any of those words suggest. It is the ability to keep functioning when functioning should be impossible. To keep fighting when fighting is hopeless. To keep caring when caring brings only pain. He changed the image to show the full medical bay after the battle. This is why Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha exists. Not because human medics are the deadliest warriors, but because they represent something far more dangerous than weapons or tactics. Kelvar spoke up, his voice uncertain now. What do they represent? They represent humanity's greatest strength and greatest madness. The belief that one person can make a difference. That sacrifice matters, that keeping others alive is worth any price. Zekthar's tendrils curled thoughtfully. A Krithian soldier fights to achieve victory. When victory becomes impossible, retreat is logical. But a human medic does not fight for victory. They fight for survival. Not their own survival, but their patient's survival. There is no retreat from that. There is no logical stopping point. They fight until they succeed or until they die. He brought up another set of statistics. After the Battle of Proxima Garrison, we analyzed every major engagement between Krithian and human forces. Do you know what we found? The cadets waited. Human units with attached medical personnel fight 37% longer than units without medics. They take 42% more casualties before retreating. Their survival rate for wounded personnel is 68% compared to our 23%. Not because their medicine is superior, though it is excellent, but because their medics refuse to let people die. Zekthar pulled up a video clip. It showed human soldiers in battle, one of them falling wounded. Immediately, a figure in medical gear rushed forward, completely exposed to enemy fire, and began treating the soldier. Other humans provided covering fire, risking their own lives to protect the medic. Watch this, Zekthar instructed. The medic is the most vulnerable person on that battlefield. No heavy armor, limited weapons, usually smaller and weaker than frontline troops. But watch what happens when we target them. The video showed a Krithian warrior aiming at the medic. Before he could fire, 3 human soldiers concentrated their fire on him. The warrior went down. Human soldiers protect their medics with fanatical determination. Kill a regular soldier and humans get angry. Kill their medic and they become unreasonable. They stop following tactics. They stop preserving their own lives. They will throw away advantages and ignore orders just to ensure their medic's killer pays for it. A cadet asked, "Why? The medic is not the most valuable military asset." "That is where you are wrong," Zekthar said. "To humans, the medic is the most valuable asset, because the medic represents hope, the promise that if you fall, someone will come for you, that you will not be left to die, that your life matters." He brought up a final image. It showed Colonel Sarah Chen, 15 years older, wearing the uniform of a high-ranking officer. Her chest displayed medals from both human and Crithian governments. This is Corporal Chen today. She is now Colonel Chen, commanding officer of the Human Medical Corps. She trains every combat medic in their military. She teaches them the same principles she demonstrated at Proxima Garrison. Zekthar zoomed in on one particular medal on her chest. It was Crithian in design, the honor of recognition. Only 3 humans had ever received it, and Chen was the only one who received it from a living Crithian commander. From Zekthar himself. 5 years after the Battle of Proxima Garrison, I was wounded in a border skirmish. My ship crashed in neutral territory. I was dying. Zekthar's voice grew softer. A human patrol found me. Their medic was a young man named Hayes, trained by Chen herself. He saved my life. The cadets leaned forward, fascinated. I asked him why. We were enemies. He could have left me to die. He looked at me like I had asked the stupidest question in the universe and said, I am a medic. That is what we do. As if it was the simplest thing in the world. Zekthar pulled up the official document for Protocol 7 Alpha. This protocol was drafted after Proxima Garrison and ratified after Hayes saved my life. It states that when any Crithian unit encounters a human medical personnel in the field, retreat is authorized and recommended. Not mandatory, but strongly recommended. Kelvar asked the question they were all thinking. But sir, does not that make us look weak? Afraid of healers? It makes us look smart, Zekthar corrected. A human soldier fights until they are ordered to retreat, or until they are defeated. A human medic fights until their patients are safe, or until they are dead. One has limits. The other does not. He pulled up a training scenario. Let me show you why. You encounter a wounded human soldier in the field. No visible backup. Easy target. You move to engage. Then you see another human approaching carrying a medical kit. What happens next? The simulation played out. The medic reached the wounded soldier and began treatment. Within seconds, the wounded soldier was back in the fight. Weaker but still dangerous. Then more wounded humans appeared, drawn by the medic's presence. The medic treated them all while the original soldier provided cover. A medic does not just heal wounds. They turn wounded soldiers back into active fighters. They create safe zones where injured humans can recover and return to battle. They multiply the effective force of any human unit they support. Zekthar stopped the simulation. Worse, they inspire irrationality in their fellow soldiers. Humans will take extreme risks to protect their medics. They will disobey orders. They will sacrifice tactical advantages, all to keep their medic alive. Because without the medic, they have no hope of survival if wounded. He looked at each cadet in turn. So when you see a human holding a medkit, you have a choice. You can engage them, knowing that every human in range will immediately prioritize your death over all other tactical concerns. Or you can retreat, live to fight another day, and engage humans on terms where you have the advantage. That seems like we are always running from humans, Kelvar said. No, it means we are choosing when to fight them. We engage human soldiers when we have superiority. We avoid human medics because the tactical cost is too high for the benefit. Zekthar smiled grimly. This is not cowardice. This is intelligence. We learned the hard way at Proxima Garrison that some battles are not worth fighting. A young cadet in the back asked quietly, Sir, do you regret that battle? Zekthar considered the question. I regret the lives lost on both sides. I regret underestimating an opponent. But I do not regret learning the lesson. Because of Proxima Garrison, because of Protocol 7 Alpha, we have saved thousands of Crithian lives by avoiding similar mistakes. He pulled up one final image. It showed Chen at her desk, older and dignified, surrounded by younger medical personnel. On her desk sat a photograph of 11 people in military uniforms, all smiling. These are the 11 patients she saved that day. All of them recovered. Several are still in active service. One is now a general. Another teaches at their military academy. They gather every year on the anniversary of the battle, and every year they thank her for refusing to let them die. Zekthar looked at his students. That is the power of a human medic. They do not just save lives in the moment. They create legacies. They inspire loyalty. They change the course of wars through individual acts of courage and stubbornness. He closed the presentation. Protocol 7 Alpha stands. When you see a human holding a medkit, you run, not from weakness but from wisdom, because that human has already decided that your death is an acceptable price for another's life. And when a human makes that decision, they have already won. Your only choice is how many of your own people die before you accept it.